Hello, my name is Jacob Bennett, and the book I have is Misbehaving, The Makings of Behavioral Economics by Richard H. Thaler. This book is broken up into 8 main sections, and the sections go as this. Part 1, Homo economicus. Part 2, Mental Accounting. Part 3, Self-Control. Part 4, Working with Danny. Part 5, Engaging the Economic Profession. Part 6, Finance. Part 7, Welcome to Chicago. Part 8, Helping Out. And there's an opening section dedicated to a friend named Amos, and how he wanted to be able to live up to the standard that Amos would write, work, and perform to. Amos was unfortunately not able to make it due to cancer, but he would want to be able to do work that would please Amos. But here's the brief summary of all the parts. Part 1 opens up with our author creating a fictional version of a person called the Homo economicus, or econ. These econs, in all ways, are the most rational people, making the correct choice and the most rational choice in the economic sense. But we are not econs, we are people. We create irrational choices and make choices that are not always the best. For that reason, economics uses flawed assumptions that we all make the rational choice. But Thaler's behavioral economics uses social sciences to be able to take into account what people act in economic models. This takes into account like people spending more money on food than they need to, or more extravagant food. Ideas like that. Part 2. Thaler thought about people and how they used money. At first, he was calling this thinking psychological accounting, but fell in line with other thinkers like Kahneman and Tversky, and fell in line with their thinking, who called it mental accounting. With this, he thought that poor people fell more in line with econs because to make ends meet, they had to make the more rational choice on where to spend their money. This thinking was also followed up with the transaction utility, which means that people are not only looking for numbers in a deal, but also looking for quality. For example, if you go out to a baseball game and you spend 3 times more for a sandwich, you're going to feel ripped off for that sandwich. But if you go to a resort, you're going to almost expect to spend more money at a resort because the costs are higher there, and some people are even pleased with the splurge that happens at a resort. This is transaction utility. This is the way people feel when completing a deal. Part 3. This chapter is about self-control. It is named as such because economic models usually do not take self-control into account. This goes in with our author making fun of economic models and talks about the thinkings of Keynes and Friedman and Modigliani, and references the marshmallow test, which is a test that would put children in a room with sweets, then take the children out of said room into a separate room and see how long they could wait. And with this test, the ones who were able to wait longer could typically did better in their ACTs, focused well, and became more like an econ as used in behavioral economics. But part 4, working with Danny. Our Arthur is working with Kahneman and finds more proof that we are not rational beings. One piece of proof is the perception of fairness, which is that people adhere to almost an honor code when making deals, such as if you're dealing with a friend, you might cut them a bargain that you wouldn't cut for other people. Or if you don't really like that person, you're gonna inflate the price on a certain object in order for them to not buy it, to punish the person, or not to sell it to them at all. This also takes into account to why some employers won't drop wages in a recession, while an econ would for pure supply, demand, and financial reasons. This all has to do with the concept of fairness. This also goes with the friendship or the cooperation principle, which means that some people will cooperate together to make other people benefit and the society benefit as a whole, rather than how an econ would just purely take for themselves and think about their own financial gain. A quote by Thaler to sum up this chapter, or this whole section, would be, "A purely economic man is a social moron." Part 5. Engaging in the economic profession. With this chapter, our author is compiling enough evidence that other economists had to consider the new perspective. Then Thaler discusses the equity premium and how this equity premium was much higher than economic models had predicted, such as the 0.04 to the actual 6% that is actually shown. This goes into risk and how bonds are typically seen as low risk, while other equity premium high stocks means you can either lose more money, but you also have a higher chance of gaining it back. This is paired with the myomic loss aversion, which means that to prevent losing, you play the game several times to secure gains, which Thaler doesn't understand why if you have a good chance to play once, that you can win, why just only play once? Why risk losing several times? This is to go into the more irrationality of how people work. Part 6, finance. Thaler says the field that the econ inhabits the most is the finance sector. The reason for this is that big banks, with all their cash, can be efficient with their decisions, which is where all the econs end up residing. They need to make fast decisions and the most logical ones in order to secure a profit. But when enough evidence piles up, the finance market can be changed. Our man then uses a Frank Sinatra quote to spoof how the finance market works. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Parts 7 and 8 describe how our man, Thaler, starts going to Chicago and starts to use his own principles to change the economic market. This is how he starts pushing behavioral economics to other economists and how he starts changing economic models. And they start being used more in the early 2000s. Such as people are starting to save more for retirement or paying your taxes on time. These new principles help economists better predict the future of economics and to create more accurate models. This book and its connection to our class has to deal with the human mind and how it thinks to numbers. How we think to numbers is not always X's and O's, typically, as our coach would say. But it's how we think of a deal personally, as the fairness principle or the perception of fairness. Transaction utility. This would allow us to change a deal from just a purely rational deal to something a little bit more. Meanwhile, a machine or the econs who work in a purely mechanical fashion at this point would go for the purely rational decision and something that's completely selfish to the benefit of that one person. The way I would think of an econ as a machine that is designed to trade. This machine's entire sole goal is to increase profit. It does not have any morals, ethics, or to how it feels about other people. A quote that I would like to summarize this point would be, in fact, econs would be perplexed by the whole idea of gifts. An econ would know that cash is the best possible gift, which allows the recipient to buy whatever is optimal. This means that a computer or an econ doesn't have any emotional attachments to certain items that people do, which would affect the economic landscape to how people would react. One fast question for the class would be, if a machine that is sentient be capable of creating irrational decisions? Thank you for listening to me. Thank you, Professor Baroni. See y'all later.